If there is anybody who's outside, needs to be inside, have them come on in. All in? Wonderful. Well, let's get started. Welcome, welcome to the celebration of life for Nancy Peregrine. Yeah. And what a life it is, right? Can we all agree on that? Absolutely. I'm Alan Brooks, the oldest son of Sophia Brooks, nephew to Peter Van Arsdale, cousin to Jessica and Anna Van Arsdale, and the nephew of the celebrant we have today, Nancy Peregrine. In the later years, Nancy would affectionately refer to herself as my Aunt Outlaw. And I think the outlaw was appropriately named. It accurately described the family relationship, but it also really accurately caught a part of Nancy's personality and her approach to her beautiful and colorful life. I've been asked by Jessica to sort of be a master of ceremonies, help with the flow, help people along maybe when they're a little long-winded, to keep us going. So that is my role for today. I'm honored to be here. Just talking with Jessica about how much love there is in this room for Nancy. It's amazing. The grief process, and that's what we're here, right? It's all part of the grief process of saying goodbye, but also appreciating the legacy, the love of somebody that we love and know very, very well. My first memory of meeting Nancy was when I was about 7. My mother, who was recently divorced, sought the healing and a new start from her life in San Francisco Bay Area. And the remote, sort of off-the-grid wilderness that is the Lost Coast and Whale Gulch was the answer for her. My mom brought my brother Nate and myself to a whole new world there in the Gulch. We settled into the big house, and we're not too far from Peter and Nancy and Anna and Jessica. This new beginning had a number of learning curves, not just for me, but also for my mother. I was talking with her recently, and she talked about this transition time in her life, and she shared something that I was not aware of before. She recalled how Nancy was such an important part for her in learning this new way of life that she was facing, and how much of a support she was to my mom. She brought her food, she helped put instructions around cooking and setting up a home in the Gulch, caring for animals and gardening, and getting the house prepared for winter, ensuring that the water didn't.
Zoomers, please hit mute.
What to do. Mom said, and I quote, Nancy was sensitive to the fact that Mom was in a new place, in a new situation. She was always there to help her, to feel relaxed and to feel confident. She wasn't reactive, she was calm and steady. And I realized as I was preparing for this that not only was she a tremendous help to my mom, but unknowingly she was a help to my brother and I in helping my mother. Mom shared that Nancy would pause what she was doing and make her feel like she was the most important thing in that moment. As I look out across this audience and on Zoom as well, I wonder if you would raise your hand if Nancy has ever made you feel like you were the most important thing in a moment. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. We all have stories and experiences of and with Nancy. And that is what this celebration is all about. This community of people who have been touched by and impacted by Nancy's life and Nancy herself. We're coming together to celebrate her, to honor this special person. As this day was being planned, Jessica told me that she wants to spend the rest of her life learning more and more about her mother. And this is a part of that process. Today's celebration will be a big part of getting to know Nancy on a deeper level as people share. So why today? What's the significance of today? Well, there's a few reasons. This date was chosen because it was close to the spring equinox, a time of new beginnings and hope. March is also the month of Nancy's mother's birthday. It's also a time of year to celebrate the Irish. Nancy had strong Irish roots. Nancy also had strong roots and ties to Mexico, and we'll be celebrating that later with the dinner that we have and the mariachi band that we play. So this celebration will be in part sharing of stories. We all have them, and we're all invited to share. There'll be some folks who will come forward as an official part of the program to be sharing stories, but you are all invited to share your stories, and there's a couple ways that you can do that. There's a story room that's off here to the side, a comfy little cozy nook that you can go in and record messages and stories and experiences you've had with Nancy and be able to share them with Nancy's family. We'd love to hear that. There's also a story wall. Some of you have probably seen that out underneath the tent. There are various writings and pictures that are there for you to take in, but also to leave as well, in written form or pictures if you'd like to leave those. The story wall helping to tell Nancy's legacy. We'll also gather together after this ceremony. We will eat, we will laugh, we will share together, and there'll be an open mic for people to also share their stories as well. In a few moments, we'll start to hear some of those stories from individuals that will come forward. But first, we will have a procession of honor to celebrate Nancy. The procession will be coming in. We'd like you to remind you to please keep the center aisle and the back clear so that they can come in. And with that, no further ado, the procession, please. Oh. Throughout the years, Nancy has been a steadfast supporter of conservation practices and a protector of the environment. An example of this is her involvement in what became known as the Cincinnati Sisters, women who fought to save the redwoods in the Sally Bell Grove in the Lost Coast. Nancy was joined by Mem Hill, Ruby Evans, Deborah Orlando, Stephanie Lusak, Janice Saden, Sandy Killer, Raven, Australia, and Sandy Bell. Members of those Cincinnati Sisters are here today with us and carry the Earth flag in tribute to Nancy's spirit and legacy. And there were some men who also stood with those women in the gap on that day. Brother Richard was here with them as well, representing them. Thank you all for your commitment to saving our wild places. Absolutely. Thank you as well to the Whale Boat Volunteer Fire Company for your sacrifice, your bravery, and your commitment to protecting the forests, the communities, and the homes in Whale Boat. Yes, sir. And thank you to all the first responders who are here in attendance, as well as those that are out right now working the front lines. The Nancy family would also like to thank the Honor Guard from Humboldt Bay, as well as the local fire departments from around the area serving their communities every day, and for their presence and support here today in celebration of Nancy. Thank you all very much. And thank you as well to the communities near and far who were connected to and love Nancy dearly. Her life and her interests were wide-ranging and diverse. We are now going to hear from a selection of people who will share their personal stories and experiences of Nancy's life. While you listen to these stories, I'm sure you'll be reminded of your own stories. So I would encourage you to recount those, remember those, share them again, either in the story room or the story wall, or on the open mic as we wrap up. So starting us off will be Richard.
Only my 2 minutes, so. Okay, I'm focusing on. I'm hoping the time today. Nancy's role. Protecting the things on the world is so. Many of you here were part of those times. You still are. I've written something that maybe you can get later on, but it's a very detailed thing, It started in 75, Nancy may have been at the first hearing about in Fort Bragg in September 77, or 77. And one thing I let you know, the Georgia Pacific and the liquidate of the remaining forests and old growth. Nancy, I feel here continually, with a leader and inspiration for all of this. When the push came to shove, when after the GP had taken almost all the Solid Gold Grove watershed timber, it became, I don't know, as a Solid Gold Grove, but the people came together. There was a lawsuit, lots of details, folks, but they came to Nancy's house. Mike was out, came off the photo, came, and they got together affinity groups. It's renewed. As soon as the plan was approved and the courts didn't stop it, they were going to cut. And that's what happened. Unfortunately, the appeals court could have stayed on it. But GP, meantime, before that could happen, in the day they had, Jay Mull was here, he could tell you all about this stuff. Thank you, Jay. Sean, thank you. Michael Solomon, incredible. But people went to the Grove, many people. And these 7 people were arrested while GP followers were trying to cut as fast as they could. And then was killed by a tail right down by the old Grove Redwood. They arrested them and they were taken to the Ukiah jail. After they were taken, the state came through. And it was hard getting an understanding of all that. But when we went down to the jail, and the anxiety for how they were doing down there, walked into the jail in Minnesota County, Ukiah. And Nancy's spontaneous, inspirational laugh went through that whole place. And we were there all right now. And she was there. And later on, we covered a little bit of stuff here. I'll hurry. But there was what's become known as the Vista Grove, old growth fir across from Redwood's Monastery behind yes, I'll remember the name sometime. But Nancy was there, and there was a teach-in about forestry and all that the day before, but next day they came, the cats, the sheriff, sort of like people watching construction work in the city. They're all watching. Nancy was there to keep track of the civil defendants. and to let people know when the save came through. And she did it. And she did it. And people were dragged out of here, and Stephanie was part of that crew too. Was dragged off that ridge. And eventually it was cut, unfortunately, but it's permanently protected. And Nancy was part of it all, and so many of you were too. All the areas are protected in the headwaters and conserved in the headwaters and in the foreground. Nancy was there all the time. Thank you, Richard.
Raise your hand if you've ever been with Nancy and supported Nancy in a conservation project. Man, beautiful, beautiful. All right, next we have Jesse Bankston. Come on up.
My name is Stephanie Langston, and I'm the current active EMT on the Level Sponsor Fire Company. First, I'm serving my third year. I'm honored to have the privilege to speak about Nancy today. I would like to start by reading a quote from Nancy, describing Whale Gulch and the Whale Gulch Volunteer Fire Company for a grant she started writing in 2019. Sandy Tillis and I were able to take what she wrote and finish the grant to purchase a slide-on unit for our side-by-side used for difficult to access emergencies. Nancy wrote, "My community of Whale Gulch is perched above the Pacific Ocean, spanning altitudes between 500 to 2,200 feet above sea level in a remote mountainous area of Northern California known as the Lost Coast. The land surrounding us is also mainly heavily forested wildlands, including Sinkyone Wilderness State Park to the south and Shanice Mountain Wilderness area to the north, with a vast amount of these areas largely inaccessible by regular vehicle. Also, the access road, which runs through the heart of our community, is a narrow single lane that suffers slip-outs, slides, and sheer drop-offs, and is not a high priority for county maintenance. We know that now more than ever. In 1973, the Whale Gulch Volunteer Fire Company was conceived out of the ashes, so to speak, from our local Finley Creek mega fire. At this time, I took the first steps to establish our company by requesting training from the CDS, now CAL FIRE, and it turned out that they were more than willing to do trainings with our then raggle-taggle band of volunteers. The perseverance and dedication of our firefighters to do their best is commendable." End quote. Nancy started organizing for fire emergencies in 1968, starting with a shed she built, some tools which she made with parts she procured from the Whitethorn dump, and a deep love for Whale Gulch, including the plants, the animals, the people, and the land itself. During that time, she would drive Bryson Road, still dirt at the time, to the nearest payphone in Whitethorn to call in emergencies. She got her EMT certification in 1980, inspired by her many long trips. She did it because she saw a need. She did it because of love. Nancy Peregrine was a chief on and off multiple times throughout her service with the Whale Gulch Volunteer Fire Company, and she mentored many other volunteers and encouraged others to be the chief with her continued support. She nurtured that love and it grew. We now have a firehouse, 2 Type 3 engines, 1 Type 6 engine, and a side-by-side. We have 15 volunteers, 9 of which are certifying and recertifying for medical aid this very weekend. And there's a handful of us who have taken up the many responsibilities that Nancy Peregrine held to sustain our fire company and support our community. Nancy participated in making decisions in the fire company until she could not. I want to thank Shelter Cove Fire, Whitethorn Fire, CAL FIRE, Southern Humboldt Tech Rescue, Telegraph Bridge, and Bryson Fire for reaching out and showing up for us. You have helped us feel supported while we are grieving and transitioning. Finally, thank you to Jessica and Anna for sharing your mom with Will Gulch for all these years. She was always there when we needed her the most. She was there for us when we were at our worst. A whole community of us. Nancy taught us so much by walking the talk. She taught us what shape love can take. Love means saying uncomfortable things in compassionate ways. Love means showing up. Love means having your vehicle stocked with emergency supplies. Love means helping someone in an emergency in the middle of a winter night storm when everyone else is sleeping. Love means going to trainings at night and on your days off. Love means being okay with not being liked. Love means accepting your humanness. Love means paying attention to the details. Love means doing what is needed. Love means being involved and being accessible. Love is picking up the torch and carrying on, trusting that we are guided by love. The Whale Gulch Volunteer Fire Company is held together by love. The love that Nancy Peregrine ignited in us keeps her close in our hearts. We honor Nancy by continuing this work and know that she stands beside us in nurturing ourselves first so that we may continue to nurture Whale Gulch. I would like to finish with a quote from Nancy from an interview she did for the New Settler in 1994 entitled Nancy Peregrine, Wondrous Woman of Whale Gulch, Fighting Wildland Fires, Homestead Alchemy, and Local Herbs. Nancy said, "We've all heard that we need to know ourselves, and we also know about needing to love ourselves. But learning how to heal ourselves means we have to understand all our organs and the functions of our body, which are our vehicles on this planet. And we have to learn how to keep them in balance. And once we learn how to heal ourselves, we have something to share with other people in those realms, because all of us are always struggling with being in balance or out of balance." Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we have Mike Lester, the current Whale Gulch Fire Chief. Maybe another year is very much. During this period, we must try to do something good. something useful for their life. If you contribute to other people's happiness, you will find people achieving with that. The 14th Dalai Lama said this. I haven't met him myself, but according to a good neighbor and friend of ours, Rick Thorngate, a very kind man for sure, who has some time shown with the Lama, shared with me what a wise and cool individual the Lama was, or is, excuse me. Nancy Peregrine also was a cool individual with much wisdom. Always doing something good, something useful. Always contributing to others' happiness. Nancy was a wonderful neighbor and friend. She would be a human being. For kindness, patience, and love for the world around her was immense. Her sincerity and understanding of others' needs and feelings was out of this world. Nancy's early adventures brought her here to the West Coast, where she decided she wanted to be part of the land, built her house and gardens, and started a family. She learned about health and how to take care of oneself, most likely because you must take care of oneself before you can take care of others. She excelled at this, and as lots of us know, Nancy also established a well-being and health consulting business. Nancy loved to help others live better lives by taking the time tough guys to go with the big babies. And research tell a solution to their problem and deal with itself. Nancy seemed to truly enjoy finding answers that would help others. When I started to see this, it was when I started to see this is when I realized that Nancy was not one of the million, but one in a million. I began to realize Nancy was a person that rather than looking for best friend you could have, was being the best friend one could have. Not what people around you can do for you, but what you can do for people around you. It's about the most admirable thing I've ever felt or seen in a person. Miss Nancy Peregrine was a person of many skills and talents, a believer in love and humanity and kindness. It wasn't until several years ago that Nancy, I found
admired Wonder Woman. And like Wonder Woman, rain, shine, or snow, night or day, it didn't matter. I felt it was needed. It's Nancy Peregrine, like Wonder Woman, who dropped what she was doing in this farm. Family issues, neighbors, disputes, broken legs, the list goes on and on. It didn't matter. Not only did Nancy drop what she was doing to respond, she would find solutions to prevent it from happening again. She could, if possible. If there wasn't an answer she didn't know, if there wasn't an answer she didn't know, she would forge through her library, the internet, or even the phone book to find solutions. She had the ability to help others who could not find help themselves. Nancy's a true superhero. Like most, if not everyone here today, Nancy Peregrine was a very dear friend, sincerely. I cannot tell you in the short time that we have here today, how wonderful a human being Nancy Peregrine is in my eyes. You know the old saying, you can count your true friends on one hand. Nancy's the best friend a person could have. Your laugh, your smile, your presence will not be forgotten. Sandy, please join me.
Well, I just have to say how much my miss Nancy. She really, really loved him and she believed in him. And I think she inspired him, no doubt. And he would not be the man or the fire chief that he is today without her mentoring. I'm going to talk about our 54 years of friendship. In October of 1968, I drove up the Usall Road with 5 other hippies to live in teepees in Whale Boat. All we knew was that it was logged over land with a creek, near the ocean and a river. It was wilderness. To my surprise, when we arrived, Nancy, Peter, and little Anna were in the meadow, just as surprised to see us. And believe it or not, I knew them. Nancy was already an icon to me. I met her living off campus at Antioch College in a small cabin with Peter, gardening, canning food, raising her baby, and making their clothes. I wanted to be just like her. She was so beautiful, dressed like a gypsy. I could never forget her. And here she was, our closest neighbor. With Nancy here, I felt I was home. Peter and Nancy really helped us out. They had plans, tools, a 4x4 with a winch, and some real skills. We had pot, music, dogs, cats, and an ocelot. They were the ants, We were the grasshoppers. Nancy taught me so many things and loaned me so many parts and tools, always with a smile and her signature chuckle. She taught me how to patch a hole in a water line with inner tubes, how to use a pipe threader, a pressure piece, how to care for horses, and milk a goat. I taught her how to sex pot plants. We became good friends, enjoyed working together, seeing the community and our families grow. Once we built our cabins, our mates became restless for new adventures. Peter and Jan became fishermen, and we became fishwives. We like to take credit for bringing the use of CB radios into the community. We put CBs in our cars, so from Swift Peak, we could talk to the guys out in the ocean fishing. Soon Nancy and I realized that we could talk to each other when parked at our homes. Well, it did not take very long for everyone else to put CDs in their homes. Soon we were all chatting away and choosing our CD handles. Nancy was Redwing, and I was Ma Bell. She was exceptionally beautiful as Redwing at our Come As Your CD Handle party. My favorite of all time. All in all, CDs were a very important part of the cohesiveness and fun of Whaleboat. We did so many projects together, planting fruit trees in the meadow, teaching tiny schools, building the community center, building the school, updating the phone list, creating animal care, protecting the old growth, and saving the salmon, to name a few. Nancy was someone you could always count on 100%. She was a woman of her word, bringing skills, tools, organization, great food, laughter, and magic to whatever we were working on. I'm skipping everything about the Synchron. Richard covered that. But we did hang straw people in the trees too, to convince them we were a bigger crowd. And I've never, since then, ever stood in a circle with loggers and policemen all at the same time. Nancy loved building and animals, so she built a stable. She convinced me to get a Welsh pony for my daughter Diva. Well, it turns out that Misty was way too ornery for Diva, but just right for me. I loved riding with Nancy. It was always an adventure. One time, on an overnight on Indian Creek, we made camp, but the horses could not get to the creek for water because of a fallen tree. Well, I thought we should go find another spot, but Nancy just took out her trusty Swiss Army knife with a little 3-inch saw and cleared all the branches, allowing the horses passage. Just one more life hack Nancy taught me. Always have a pocket knife with a saw. Well, these stories are just the tip of the iceberg. She was my go-to person, from a cup of sugar to pulling my truck out of the ditch. She was always there for me, and I can only hope that I was as good a friend to her. It's hard carrying on without Nancy's physical presence. I miss her every day. I am so grateful for all the years we shared. Over and out, Red Wing. Yes, we do.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, raise your hand if you've ever, go back to our firefighters, if you've ever fought a fire with Nancy. Yeah, beautiful. Raise your hand if you have ever taken a pack trip with a lot of our horses with Nancy. Exactly. Well, our next speaker is no stranger, Ray Raphael. He's a historian, published author, longtime Whaleboat OG, and my first basketball coach. So welcome, Ray Raphael.
And then I'd be away for the first time when he arrived in adulthood with my play buddy. You know, I was a grown up and he was like, I don't know, what was it, 10 or something, and we were about evenly matched. Well, okay, so, here goes, over 50 years in 5 minutes. Being 1969, I arrived in Whale Gulch absolutely clueless. Growing up in New York, the closest woods that I had was the Brambles in Central Park. And I had acquired zero homesteading skills there. But upon arrival in Whale Gulch, it didn't take me long, you can surmise from Sandy's talk, to figure out where to go. If I needed some advice in gardening, building, mulching, canning, whatever it was, just ask Nancy. That's the survival, that's all you had to know. Example, what is a dog, a bunch of dogs kill a deer right by our house on Novocaine Road. So, and I arrived just as the deer is dying, I'm holding the deer in my arms, so it's his last breath. Well, obviously, you know, I never had to skin a deer in Central Park. They didn't have it. And they wouldn't allow the skinning anyway, so, you know, for that. So what do? Well, Marie wanted to consult Joy of cooking. That was her go-to source. And my go-to source was Nancy. And she knows too, we could fill in the here. Okay. So that's scene 1. Okay. Now we're going to go to scene 2, fast forward quite a bit, quite a few years, and now we're in the mid-1980s. And I'm teaching house. First, we had school in the house with Anna and Jessica and others. Then we moved up to our own school, our own meaning a community school. And there was time enough, size enough of the school to have an aide. So who should we have for an aide? Well, that's Nancy. Now, it was hard for me, I didn't hardly recall this, and so Jessica reminded me, and why didn't I recall it? So I always see Jessica and Nancy as the leader, you know, she goes, I step ahead of everybody. They didn't think of her as an aide. Well, me for you. She's just as good at the support role as she is in the leading role. People who probably knew that since she was never in a support role, she was in the leading role. But she really was. I mean, just her gentle touch to kids is just fantastic. So, okay, move forward a little bit more. Mary and I moved to town, but I'm still in touch with the Gulf community. I want to know what's going on. What do I do? 986-7356. No longer Red Wing, because we're in town now, but it's a phone number, 986-7356. That's Nancy. If I'm feeling a little ill or something and I want a little advice, I just wait till Wednesday, go over to Chautauqua, and there she is in Chautauqua, and I just ask Nancy. Okay, now we're going to go over to move forward to the early 1990s, and we get a place by the river, start kayaking, and Nancy gets into kayaking, and we start kayaking together. We have a whole crew of these beginner kayaks, and whether ill-advised or not, we start doing whitewater from Lake to Piercy, and people are falling out of their kayaks right and left. And generally, when people fall out of their kayaks, the beginners, they go, you know, they like that. And then Nancy has been falling out and gives that chuckle that we all know. You know, that quick, right? Because this joy of life chuckle as she's falling out. We're kayaking and she pulls up at shore totally unsaved. And so that's but Nancy knows what's up, and she realized that this could be a dangerous situation. So she gets Chris Man Speaker, and my son Neil and myself and Nancy go up to swiftwater rescue training up in Willow Creek. Yeah. And so we all do the thing and we learn our things. And so, okay, we know a little bit more, but are we really prepared? Well, I don't feel that prepared. But Nancy takes the next step and she actually gets the equipment, you know, because she's kind of, she says we call it kayaking, so it's a deer head. So the next time we go down, she's got all the safety equipment, you know, the ropes, the carabiners and everything, and she's ready to go. Okay, so that's again, she's got the joy and the safety all in one. My last tale, I'm actually going to circle back to the beginning, and so this is going to be scene 1.2, and now we're about 1970, 1971, right in there, and I have not yet gotten together with Marie. That's happening a year or two later. And so I'm single, and we're having a lot of parties in the adults, and one of the great things we do is get square dancing. And Peter is a great square dance caller, and he's lively, and he's got it all down, and it's so fun with his movement and hollering, it's great all the time. But I don't have a partner. What do? Just ask Nancy. And so Nancy is my partner, and let me tell you, square dancing with Nancy is something else, because she square dances, this is a standard American thing, with Mexican flair. Just exuding exuberance and she's one step ahead of the call. I mean, she's going to do the step almost before Peter falls. And just simultaneously helping everybody out. And the rest of us were all at the same time. Okay, so that's 50 years and 5 minutes. But I do want to close with a little thing that I want to do. Look at this. The funny thing is, I'm a public speaker, right? And look at what I have. But then, this is, as you've seen from some of the other people here, it's not an easy job. Talking up here. Honestly, the emotions get the better of us. Or the better of us. Okay, so now I'd like to do something with you, which is I'd like you, if you could, to all close your eyes for a second. And just get a visual picture of Nancy in your mind, with whatever relationship you have with her. Just keep it in your mind, because I'm going to say it to you. Nancy, I'm not asking you now, Nancy, but I'm telling you, you have brightened and enriched my life, all of our lives, and we thank you for being so you.
Well, raise your hand, Alaman left and do if you've ever just asked Nancy. Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Pleasant Strange. My name is Pleasant. Come on up, Pleasant. Thank you.
To not die. It may happen. When Jay was talking about this day, she was talking about people who wanted to speak, and she turned and looked at me. I said, of course I am. And then Ray calls me and says, what are you going to talk about? I want to make sure nobody's overlapping and they're talking about things about Nancy. I'm like, well, shit, I thought I was going to talk. Like, oh my God, like now I'm on spot. I go, oh God, it's a theme. But it already was my theme, because I'm coming from a totally different place. You all knew her when you were young. I knew her when I was young, but you guys are all older. So this is my ode to Nancy for finding note cards. How do you fit? Over 40 years of love, we have been 5 minutes. You just, but I'm going to try. To me, and a lot of us girls, she was a cross between, a fairy, a white mystical witch, and something super extraordinary, and not of this world. She believed in the magic of the world, the fairies, the unicorns, the mermaids, and she shared her belief in all that magic with all of us girls. I was a young teenage girl when I met Nancy, and I would spend weekends at her house with Jessica, Nicole, and Anna, another girl. A magical place that you were not blessed to ever get to go with. With llamas in a meadow, next to an orchard, next to another meadow. With a water fountain and wood carvings surrounding it. And as you follow the trail through the orchard, you ended up at stables with goats and horses. And a beautiful magical walk through the woods. When you walk into the house and up the stairs, you are immediately hit with the smell of sweetness. Something familiar, but you couldn't quite pinpoint what the smell was. It was a magical place, filled with so much love. You have a bed propped high, so you could look out either window, out into the meadows, the gardens, the llama pasture, and out over the water tank. Or water tank, I should say. Even if you've never been to Nancy's, I'm going to explain what that is to you. It's a huge cement system, big, huge column with a deck that has those about 2/3 of the way around it. And on the deck, there's a dove cave where they would always go when we were out there. It had stairs wrapped around half the tank, down into the meadow, and it had ivy growing up the side into the water, with koi fish sliding to the surface when you walked to the edge. And there was always a constant flow and trickle of water going into the tank, which was always calming and soothing to hear. It had a little platform with stairs where you can jump into the pool if you chose to dare. As girls, we would lay in the sunshine in the summertime and then dunk our warm bodies into the brisk spring mountain water and laugh and giggle for hours. Nancy would love to just sit and watch us. Have I mentioned how magical it was to be at Nancy? I'll never forget the first time I stayed with Jessica out there. Jessica will remember this. About the crack of dawn, I was awoken by the loudest scream I have ever heard in my entire life. I get up and I'm ready to run. I'm scared. I don't know what the hell it is. And I look in the window and there's this big, huge, beautiful peacock sitting there. Right above our heads, open window and all. And I mean, it was the funniest thing. Nancy just couldn't stop laughing because I mean, I was screaming. She was out there giggling and laughing. She thought it was funny. She also thought it was really funny to always try to put goat's milk into everything. Cereal. He would try to give us that shit all the time. Like, you can throw the milk at me. She's like, oh, we don't. When we are teenagers, or I'm sorry, when we are teenagers is when we become hyper aware of who we are in our bodies and try to discern where we're going and where we're at. Nancy was so good at listening and helping us girls feel safe to talk about the changes in our bodies and ourselves. Always listening and smiling and giving words of wisdom, but never judging for our wild side. And we were a bunch of bad girls with the determination to conquer any task set before us. And she would absolutely glow with pride at all of us girls, and there were many of them, and you all know who you are. I always felt at home when I was with her. Nancy was like a second mother to me. When I was a teenager, she opened her heart to me, and that was the most precious gift that she ever gave me. When I was struggling, she would nurture me and offer me sound advice and just be there to listen and offer hugs of comfort with a cup of tea. Of course, with good milk. I moved away back to Southern California. I would always go back in the summertime. to spend time with Jessica and Anna, and of course Nancy out at her house. When I was 18 years old, I met a beautiful woman, Fred. I remember our first trip up here together. Of course, it was for Reggie on the river to hang out with my sisters and just love being on the river and listening to music. We would always spend the week after out at Nancy's house, sometimes too, with Jessica and Anna. And Travis was so blown away with how beautiful it was and how warm and loving Nancy was. Over the years, our annual trek from Southern California to Humboldt, we would camp in the meadow for weeks at a time. We would always help with the clearing of the orchard, the stacking of the wood, cleaning the weeds, and the sad task of helping her bury her beloved Yana as the years went on. We were always so grateful to help her because we loved her so incredibly much. In 1991, Travis and I were married in Thompson Creek Meadow, and we wanted to share our special day with some of the most special people we knew, and that was Nancy and Jessica. I'll never forget a girl walking down from Nancy's house over to the meadow. Sorry. Barefoot, bells on her ankles, and Jasper in my belly. What an amazing day that was. I missed something in here. Nancy was always as warm as her home and just as inviting. In fact, she was so inviting that she eventually built a cabin in the woods where guests could come stay. So, in September of 1986, Travis was applied for a firefighter's position up here in Southern California. He was a firefighter as well. And he got an interview, so we called Nancy, so we had it. Can we come stay? We're gonna make it a week-long trip and come visit with you. She said, of course you can come stay. So we came up and spent a week with her, and Travis did his interviews, and 9 months later, Santa came. And Nancy was so happy when I told her because she knew that she played some small role in bringing another child into our life, because we'd always talked about how I'd always wanted more children. And she understood that need and desire, but she did help in some way. I'm not sure what year she started going to the Northern California Women's Herbal Symposium, but I do remember the excitement in her face when she was telling me all about it. A bunch of women gathering, sharing knowledge of all kinds, from herbs to body care, talent shows, drumming circles, bonfires, stories, talent nights, mating ceremonies, prank ceremonies, and the honoring of being a woman. She really wanted me to have that experience as well with her and Jessica and then Raven. So she called me up one day and told me she bought me a ticket. Again, magical. I couldn't believe how amazing it was, and continued to attend for years. Watching her inclusion into the Crown Circle was an honor. Such grace and beauty emitting from such an amazing woman. I could share more, but it's kind of a girl thing. If you know, then you know. She opened my eyes to another magical thing, and I in turn shared that knowledge with my children. Both our sons, Jasper and Skylar, and our daughter Erin called her grandma Nanny when they were growing up. I remember asking her if that was all right, and with a tear in her eye and a signature smile, she gave me a kiss and hugged me tight and said she again in turn had a huge impact on my life moving back up here in 2002. She heard her job. Somebody was looking for a caretaker. And she called me and told me, and of course, we came back up. At the end of that year, Travis and I decided to build a small cabin in the piece of property we owned. It was a dream come true, and again, she was an integral part of making that happen. We built a home together with the help of many friends and family, but of course, Nancy being at the top of the list. We were always asking for her advice, and she was happy to divulge any information she thought we could use. Nancy was an educator of many things. She was the powerhouse of knowledge and could fix or mend just about anything or anyone. She was the one I would reach out to for help when the kids were sick or anything was giving me trouble. She always knew which herbal remedy would work the best for whatever was ailing me or them or anyone else. She taught me so much about herbs and how to use them, tincture, salve, dried flesh, mind investigation, and preservation. And I have a very specific memory from when I was a teenager, and it's one of my most favorite. It was Nancy, Jessica, Braden, and Stephanie, and myself that planned a day of blackberry picking so we could can them the next day. She also taught me about eating and the use of Mona's low sugar packet, the best way to use it. Anyway, we picked berries all day. I think we had at least 2 5-gallon buckets full. Then we get home and Nancy gives us very strict instructions to throw the water out the window. Because she has no blackberries out there and she wants to pick her own. So we do. 2 years later, we covered in blackberries everywhere and we're mowing them out of the orchard. It's pretty bad. But she was so happy and she loved it. She was so excited. In 2006, I was contemplating having another child. The boys were already pretty independent, but I had always wanted more children. I would talk to Nancy about my desire to have a girl, a daughter, of course. She told me to ask the universe, the goddess, the divine feminine, and to just be open. So on the night of the full veil, I'm standing on my deck, telling the universe, the goddess, the divine feminine, that I am open and I am asking for my daughter. But she better hurry because I gave myself a deadline on becoming pregnant and I wouldn't go any further after that. 2 months later, one day spending my time with Nicole, I realized I'm pregnant and I knew it was a daughter. I knew she had come. We were so excited to share the news with Nancy and she was so happy to share in that joy with us. But most importantly, she was so happy for me because she knew that a mother-daughter bond is her most sacred bond. Just like the bond she shares with her 2 beautiful little daughters. We both love Robert Frost. And I have a poem to read before I end, which is, of course, Nothing Gold Can Stay. Nature's first dream is full, her heart is key to hold, her early piece of flower, but only so an hour. When we subside to leave, so evening sinks to breathe, so dawn goes on today, nothing gold can say. So, I feel truly fortunate and blessed to call me the family. I am so grateful that I got to spend the last 2 years celebrating her on Mother's Day along with Jessica, Nicole, Michael, Raven, and them and her close friends. Thank you, Jessica, for everything. You have been such an amazing strength and undying love for your mother these past few years, and I know they were hard, but you are such an amazing testament to how absolutely wonderful your beautiful and amazing, spectacular mother is. In a world where we can be anything, be kind, remember kindness. Remember the kindness she shared with each and every one of you. Remember the love she gave to each and every one of you. But most importantly, remember how much you love her each and every day.
Have a musical offering here. Thank you very much, pleasure for that. One of the challenges, one of the gifts that we have here in this modern age is the ability for people to join us via Zoom. So we recognize that there are a whole host of people far and wide right now who are joining via Zoom. I'm seeing that there is some challenges with audio, there's some challenges with the backlight, and you can only see people's silhouettes. So on the Zoom, we're sorry for your less than ideal experience of this amazing tribute to Nancy. I would ask that those who are coming up to speak get as close as you can to the microphone. It'll make it easier on those on the Zoom. We'll do the same with Michael, who's coming up now. Yes. Right. So one of the things that's unique about a community is communication. Communication keeps the community together, it helps establish its purpose, its identity. I think we can all agree that Nancy was one of the key elements of communication within her community. She was the nexus of so much. We heard about it with Ray. Just ask Nancy. The song that Michael Christian is coming up to you now is a song about an element of her communication. The name Red Wing, her CD handle. Michael Christian is Nancy's son-in-law through marriage to Jessica.
Nancy was really an amazing person. She was a fine example of karma and how our good actions and intentions can multiply, blessing others and returning home once again. And actually, my meeting Jessica was a direct consequence of a kindly act that we did with Raven. Purchasing an EMT course for her. And what year was that, Raven, that we met? You and I? It was in the early, yeah, it was in the early 90s. I was working as a nurse in the ER, and in comes a brand new nurse. And she's there as a direct consequence of a kindly act from Nancy. And I had the good fortune of working a really slow night in the ER. There's no patients, there's just Raven, myself, and a physician who was newly divorced. He was still in San Francisco. And so Raven was like trying to set him up on a date with Jessica. And I thought to myself, because I was planning to go to San Francisco later in the year to study North Indian music, and I just put it on the shelf. I said, well, if she's anything like Raven is describing, then you don't want anything to do with this guy. And there was another connection where Ruta was doing classes. She was doing spiritual classes combined with art, and she happened to do a abbreviated course up in Arcata or the Sonoma area, and I took that class, and actually that's what got Jessica's phone number because she didn't want to give it out. But I remember Pleasure the first time that we met was in 1997, and the first words out of Pleasure's mouth were, "You don't know what you just stepped into." And so that was my first time on the property, and Nancy grew up in Mexico, and the thing was there to build onto your house, keep your family close, keep your family close. Jessica and Autumn had already moved away, and so she just built places on the property for them. And she cleared a ridge top for us, and I remember the first time going up there with Jessica, it was just absolutely amazing. And while Jessica was doing her residency in Portland, Nancy would come up and visit with us, and when she'd rent the largest U-Haul that she could find, she would fill it up with yurt parts from a business there. It was all sectional, and then she would bring it home, stack it on a flatbed trailer, and haul it up this quad road up behind her ATV. And so we would come and visit, and it was always a little bit stressful because you bring all your stuff and then you load it into a wagon, pull it up the ATV, hopefully it all stays in there. Sometimes not. I remember a Thanksgiving turkey bouncing down the road. Yeah. And so we got there one time, we needed a new refrigerator, so I picked up a refrigerator, I put it in the back of the truck. We got there, we unloaded all our stuff, took it up there, last load was gonna be the refrigerator. The brakes seemed a little bit sketchy on that ATV that day. It just stopped suddenly. And so we finished our last load of household goods. We swapped trailers, put flatbed on there, down the refrigerator, and 20 feet, well, probably closer to 20 yards from the crest of the hill. It was probably about 30 degrees. All four brakes locked up and would not release. So I got on the radio and I said, Red Lane, are you there? Please be there. And I described the situation, and she said, well, I'm right in the middle of a nutritional consultation right now. But if you walk down my barn, there's a come along, there's some chains there. Just put them in the backpack, take them up, and when I'm done, I'll come in. And she was 72 years old. She had just had surgery the year before for chronic back pain, and she was hooking the come along up to the quad. She is telling me tales of how she learned to use come along and how she would use them on rescues, and sometimes use two at a time as she's pulling a vehicle up out of a ravine in between the trees. And then she sat down and started cranking on the come along. And she wouldn't give me the time. And I just thought, what a wonderful song. I really stepped in with magic. Yeah. Introduced herself as his mother outlaw.
Thank you very much, Michael.
First thing for one. When I was about 7, I had an experience with my mom that had a deep impact on me. We were driving home from two Whale Gulch from San Francisco. Somewhere around Novato, there were many cars pulled off the freeway and parked on the edge. There were about 50 people near their cars looking down at the most horrible sight I've ever seen. The car was on fire and there were people thrown from the car, and one of them was on fire. EMS had not arrived yet.
I watched my mom jump to action. She grabbed the fire extinguisher that she of course kept in the van. And without hesitation, she ran down that embankment and proceeded to put the fire out. At that point, EMS arrived and it became clear that the family was Spanish speaking only. And my mom was the only person there that could translate. We went to the hospital with them and Nancy acted as a translator for the family for at least 5 hours. We had about a 5-hour trip ahead of us to get home, but Nancy did not hesitate to do what was needed at that moment. What an exemplary role model she was. I was so proud to be her daughter. She had such an amazing depth of compassion and willingness to help others that still fascinates me to this day. I often wonder what gave her that depth of compassion. She had a lot of tragedy in her life, with the loss of her father to cancer when she was 3, and the loss of her mother to suicide when she was 12. After these types of losses, she could have ended up on a path of darkness and destruction, but instead, she became the most giving and compassionate person that I have ever known. She found a way to believe in herself, and she found a path in life that was about being of service to others. Her father was a biochemist with a brilliant mind. Her mother came from a long line of librarians with brilliant minds. And I think Nancy inherited that ability to really analyze a problem and come up with a solution. Whether it was figuring out how to build a deck or how to help someone with a complex health issue, she would not give up. Every day I saw her giving a hand and helping people who were struggling. If she knew somebody was suffering, she would keep thinking about them and helping them however she could. She would not give up. She would research every option. She would often wake up at 3 a.m. with a solution and would be so excited about it. She was a true healer in this way. She instilled in me a desire to lead a life of healing and service, which played a really important role in my decision to become a physician. As hard as the last 3 years of her life were, I feel honored that I got to care for her. And during that time, my understanding of compassion grew by leaps and bounds. One of the gifts during that time was that I got to know her better, both through being with her, but also through her connection with all of you. And I want to personally thank you all for connecting with her however you could during that time. It meant so much to her and to me. Despite her condition, she did not go to a place of self-pity. I did not see her shed one tear for herself after she lost the ability to walk and use the left side of her body. Instead, she would tell me that she needed to get back to working at Chautauqua because she was sure there would be a long line of people waiting for her to get a health consult. She also would make sure that every day we checked if it was a red flag day, so we could warn people of fire danger. Nancy made this world a better place with her kindness and compassion. Through her, I was able to find the gifts hidden in tragedy. Another gift I received was the opportunity to experience being a mother. I wasn't able to have children, but I was able to be a mother to Nancy when she needed it. Before she left, I was able to thank her for being such a wonderful mother and then allowing me to be that for her. What a blessing. Nancy wasn't religious, but she was very spiritual. She believed that visualization, loving kindness, positive thoughts, clear intentions could protect and heal. On a practical level, this meant that every time we left her, she would wave her arms around us and say, "I'm surrounding you with white light and protecting you on your journey." I believe she is still doing that for all of us. Her icons were the Virgin of Guadalupe and Wonder Woman. And I think we can all see the resemblance. She had a little saying posted in her living room that said, "I'm not saying I'm Wonder Woman, but have you ever seen us in the same room together?" Think about it. The Virgin of Guadalupe is a brown-skinned goddess who appeared to a peasant in Mexico. She is a symbol of justice for the poor and marginalized people, and she represents unconditional love and protection. When Nancy was 10 years old, she crawled on her knees, skin to stone, as she participated in the sacrificial crawl to the Basilica de Guadalupe. As she crawled, she held a baby in her arms that belonged to Maria, who cared for her. Many years ago, Nancy drove home from Mexico with a 5-foot-tall wooden sculpture of the Virgin of Guadalupe as her passenger. Her childhood living in San Miguel de Allende from the age of 8 to 12 instilled in her a deep sense of community, and she carried that to Whale Gulch and beyond. I've heard her described as the wondrous woman from Whale Gulch, the spiritual mother of Whale Gulch, the queen of Whale Gulch, a mother to all, an angel dropped from heaven, an OG hippie goddess, a magnificent mountain mama, a true Renaissance woman, a shiro, a pioneer, an icon of the Back to the Landers, the go-to trusted adult, and a badass. She used to love it when the young guys would tell her that the only thing missing from her Swiss Army knife was a chainsaw. She traveled the world. She wished for world peace when she blew out her birthday candles. She carved dragon heads into the ends of the beams in the house that she built. I think that she graduated from life with highest honors. She was absolutely a community treasure. And I think I grieve not only for myself, but I grieve for all of you and the community and what you lost too. Every day I aspire to be like her, more like her. Here's something I've started to do, and I invite you to do it as well. When faced with a difficult situation where someone needs help, I put on my Nancy hat and ask myself, what would Nancy do? See, Ray, we can still ask her, but we just have to phrase it differently. And this is particularly important when the situation comes up at a really inconvenient time. Like when you're tired or hungry or it's the middle of the night. Nancy can be our true north in trying to figure out how to do the right thing. She chose the name Peregrine because it means pilgrim or traveler. Now Nancy is on the next journey of her travels. Let's keep Nancy's spirit alive by using her memory to compel us to reach out and help others. Let's connect with her through joy, just as we did when she was in her body. Think of the sparkle in her eye and the giggle in her heart, and use that to propel us forward as we make the world a better place.
Thank you. Beautiful words, beautiful words. We next have Gretchen Robinette, who is Nancy's cousin. They traveled a lot together while Nancy was researching family history. And if you know anything, the old adage says what happens on the road stays on the road. Well, I think perhaps cousin Gretchen will be giving us some skinny on what actually happened on the road.
Jessica, that was absolutely beautiful. I am so pleased to be here with all of you. I just feel Nancy everywhere I look. And I know she meant so much to all of you, and she did to me. I'm Gretchen. I'm Nancy's second cousin. We're related through our mothers. Nancy's mom, Mary Alice, who we knew as Raggy, and my mother, Phyllis, fondly known as Steve. I have only fleeting memories of Nancy in childhood, since she and my Aunt Raggy lived in San Miguel de Allende at that time. They seldom visited California during our early childhood, but I have clear recollections of riding through Pasadena with Nancy and her mom in their mud-spattered car with Mexico plates, ranchera music from the car radio blasting the sedate streets of Pasadena. I remember playing lively games of croquet on her granny's front lawn with my sisters, Leslie and Becky, and my cousins, Eric and Shelley. Nancy and I shared a love for the weed folk. We used to walk around her granny's garden into her little bamboo forest looking for the fairies. Those were happy times. But at the age of 12, Nancy's mother died while they were visiting Granny in Pasadena. Nancy was devastated. It was so incredibly sad to see her grief. She was literally wasting away. There was always light in my cousin, though. That could not be extinguished. She recovered and was adopted by her granny. It was clear by the time that she entered Pasadena High School that she had regained her spunkiness. When she worked diligently with her like-minded friends to buck the system and publish a resistance underground newspaper. Gladys, the dowager principal of PHF, tried but failed in vain to swell Nancy's revolutionary spirit. Having lost her mother and her father at a young age, Nancy cherished family. her own biological family, and the family of friends that she gathered under her wing in Whale Gulch. Later in her life, she began to piece together her family history on our mother's side, the Irish side of the family. We got back in contact a bit before that time, visiting one another, attending the women's herbal symposium. Nancy had quite a funny bone. One day we had KP duty and we were in the kitchen, and our task was to chop onions. And so we're doing everything we can not to be just frying buckets. We put dish towels in our mouth, and people would come in and look at us. And Nancy just laughed. We brought our families together. Our sons got to meet her. At some point, Nancy and I started to gather information about our families, and Nancy took on the task of unraveling the family history, beginning with our great-grandmother, Catherine Ryan, who arrived in New York City from Pappamore, Ireland in 1855 as an immigrant. Nancy was dogged in her research, contacting priests, sometimes tweaking them in Ireland for parish birth and death records when they wouldn't get back to her right away. Searching through ship manifests, genealogical records in many libraries, and writing numerous letters to Ireland and Australia in search of her family. Bear in mind, this was long before all of the genealogical software and programs that exist today. Nancy made a visit to Ireland very early in her research, but was unable to find many of the contacts that she had hoped for, and a lot of the information she knew was there. We kept in close contact as her research progressed, and at some point hatched a plan to travel together to Ireland to meet the relatives that Nancy had located. By this time, Nancy had amassed a great deal of information about the Ryan family in and around Limerick. To our great good fortune, she had begun to correspond with a distant cousin, Donald Ryan, who lives in Lisnagride, just outside of Limerick. When we arrived in Ireland, Donald, his wife, Helen, and their sons, Connor and Kieran, graciously opened their hearts and their home to us. And they introduced us to many of the family in Lisnagride. Our travels took us on an amazing journey of remembrance. I, the driver, Nancy, the navigator, because I unfortunately said to her early on, "Oh, I'm a terrible navigator." And she got this little twinkle in her eye. Oh boy, she's going to be the driver in this place. We were able to visit Pappamore, where great-great-grandmother Catherine had been born and raised. We did research in the Dublin archives, where we discovered some of the life of our great-great-grandfather, John Ganane. And then we went to Cork, which was incredibly moving, where Catherine and John had set sail for America in 1855. A highlight, though, of our trip was a visit to the Guinness Brewery in Dublin, which, according to Nancy's research, was originally owned by our distant relative, Mark Rainsford. A few years later, our genealogical travels also took Nancy and me to Silverton, Colorado, where our great-great-grandfather, John Ganane, lived for a number of years, working as a miner. On each step of our journeys together, I was ever amazed at Nancy's dedication to unraveling the mysteries of our family history. Her work now is being continued by our wonderful Australian cousin, Stephen Ryan. Over time, I came to think of Nancy as a Celtic spirit. I've read that the ancient Celts held the belief they were descended from trees. Trees were considered gatekeepers to the Celtic otherworld and represented the afterlife. It is truly fitting that Nancy's heritage is linked to Ireland, that she had such a close bond with her heritage and with the trees and the creatures that she protected in the Pinkion wilderness. They surrounded and inspired her for most of her life. Nancy was deeply rooted in the earth, her family, her friends, her well-built community, and the forested land that she so loved. When Nancy left her mortal life behind, I imagined her passage in this way. Free to fly. Deep in the meadow at break of dawn, softly she moves, drawn to goldfinch song. Now, herself taking wing, she too will sing. Peregrine soul, soaring at hawk's side. Below her precious life, her dear daughters a world womb mourn, her family of friendship fashioned. With joy, mortal bindings unleashed, gypsy spirit intact, her beautiful soul set free to fly.
Thank you. All right, we will be having a musical performance. Eva, Stephanie, and Jesse. Jessica shared many important moments with Nancy over the final years of her life. One such moment was the sharing of her 5 wishes for her memorial service. And 2 of the songs that she identified as wanting to be played are going to be performed now by Eva, Stephanie, and Jesse. Yes, thank you.
Everybody is worried about the weather, the whole season. No one knows the day, the day. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Someday when you're gone, someday you'll come. Someday you won't be on, doesn't everything away you like. Someday you won't come back, you don't care. Think I just let the message be. Everybody is wondering what and where it's going. Everybody is worried about where it's going. No one knows the day, so it's all to say with me. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Someday we'll do a big small glory and say back. But I've heard that all the territory in the dark to change the past. I believe you know that it's supposed to be. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Everybody is wondering why, where it's going. For it's already things that no one knows the day, so
Think I'll just let the mystery be. Think I'll just let the mystery be. You guys know that you can sing along in the chorus or wherever you know it. Nancy wanted you to sing along with it. Tomorrow, first, and I know the only song is now. When we go, the whole ground. I wonder what more long will be.
We will now have our bell ceremony and last call.
The men and women of today's fire service are confronted with more dangerous work environments than ever before. We're forced to continually change our strategies and tactics to accomplish our tasks. Our methods may change, but our goals remain the same as they were in the past. To save lives and to protect property, sometimes at a terrible cost. This is what we do. This is our chosen profession. This is the tradition of the firefighter. The fire service of today is ever changing, but it's steeped in tradition 200 years old. One such tradition is the sound of the bell. In the past, as firefighters begin their tour of duty, it was the bell that signaled the beginning of today's shift. Throughout the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell, which summoned those brave souls to fight fires and to place their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow citizens. And when the fire was out and the alarm had come to an end, it was the bell that signaled to all the completion of that call. When a firefighter had died in the line of duty, paying the supreme sacrifice, it was the mournful toll of the bell that solemnly announced a comrade's passing. We utilize these traditions as symbols to reflect honor and respect on those who have given so much and served so well. To symbolize the devotion that these brave souls had for their duty, a special signal of 3 rings, 3 times each, represents the end of our comrades' duty, and that they will be returning to quarters. And now, Chief Nancy has completed her task. Her duties, well done. She has given her best. For our fallen sister, her last alarm, she has gone home.
There are so many of you in here from different chapters of Nancy's life who have known her for many, many years. Some maybe who just had the pleasure of meeting recently. Wanted to see if you've known Nancy for 5 years or less, please stand if you are able. If you've known Nancy for 10 years or less, please stand. If you've known Nancy for 20 years or less, please stand. If you've known Nancy for 25 years or less, please stand. If you've known Nancy for 30 years or less, please stand. Yeah, please remain standing. 35 years. 40 years. 45 years. 50 years. 60 years. Ollie goes way back, evidently. 60, is there anybody with more than 60? 65. Wonderful, wonderful. Any more than 65? Yes, 70 years. 70. Feel like I need to have Pete up here with the Alaman call. 75. 80 years. 80. 85. All right, I think we have everybody standing. There is amazing, amazing years and years of relationship and love in this room with Nancy. That's what this is all about, the celebration of that. We want to conclude this ceremony with a beautiful circling of her community. And we need your help. You are here with us. Those of you who are on the Zoom, you will be able to see this as well. And please, in your mind, join our circle. For those of you who are standing here next to your chairs, if you will just start to push your chairs to the left and to the right, to the sides of the room. Please push. Okay, if the RCF crew would please come back and receive the chairs, but if you would push your chairs to the left and to the right, to the sides of the room, and you will now be led in what was happening next. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We do have one more song, John's song. So while we are circling up, we will have a song. We'll wait until everybody gets to two. Yeah. And I'm going to speak to those on the Zoom call. I know this has been. Okay. At times it's been challenging to see the faces of those who are speaking and maybe also to hear the words. But I think you received the essence of what is here in a celebration of a ceremony. And I would say, while we cannot be physically a part of leaving words on the story wall or coming to the story room, we invite you to share your thoughts and your experiences with Nancy via email or written word if you would like to send those in. The email that has been shared that has been giving the information around the celebration, you can respond to that email. Obviously, if there are written words that you want to send via letter or postcard or anything like that, those can be sent as well to Jessica and family, and that information will also be provided. There's a website that you've seen that will continue to be updated with information both from what is shared here today, but also the ceremony and this service. So thank you very much for your attention and your patience while you were on the Zoom call in the Zoom experience. All right.
Yeah. Anything is possible and everything occurs in the face of love. In the valley of the low, you and I stand. We don't see the stars, floating we don't. And yet the song is all around us, intertwining with the light. It keeps us safe from sorrow, in the darkest of our night. It brings us to confidence. The ocean takes us on, it sees us on. There's a tapestry of riches, woven on the wind, reflected in the eyes of the fragrance. And
And the song is one. Till the end of the song.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. One more clap for Nancy. On behalf of Nancy's family, I just want to thank you all for coming, for your celebration, for your participation. The rest of the evening is now going to commence. The bar up top is open. Beer, wine, and margaritas. Celebration drinks are there for you. There's going to be a dinner served here at the back. There will also be music being played by Ray Bevatori and Michael Curran. Then there will be an hour of mariachi music as well. Yes, I want to remind you, there are actually multiple ways in which you can share your stories and your experiences of Nancy. One, the story room is over here to the left of the stage. Come in, record a message or an experience or a story you have about Nancy. There's also the story wall out underneath the tent. You can see different elements of writing and pictures that have been shared, and you can also share your own. And then later, as the evening wraps up, after the mariachis, there will be an open mic night where you can share stories as well to the rest of everybody here. So again, thank you very much. Let the party begin. Oh, before you break up, everybody on Zoom, thank you very much for your patience and participation. Again, we invite your stories and sharings as well. Please send them in either via email or regular mail to Jessica Van Daily. Thank you, thank you. This concludes the Zoom portion. Thank you.
Hello, we're gonna be pulling out tables for dining. So if you can clear just the middle spot, and if anybody wants to help, I'm over here pulling out our table. If you just come to me and I'll give you a tour.
In the interest of safety, make sure that you lock the legs on the table. Lock the legs underneath the table. Lock your legs. Pleasure. Lock your legs, pleasure.